What if your greatest strength wasn't in how fast you react, but in how wisely you respond? In today's world, where triggers are everywhere and pressure builds quickly, mastering your reaction is more than just a skill, it's a survival tool. That's what we're exploring today. The art of training your mind to respond, not react. Rooted in Stoic philosophy, this timeless principle offers a powerful way to face life's chaos with clarity and intention. Think back to a moment when you were caught off guard, overwhelmed, or provoked. Did you react instinctively, or did you pause and choose your response? The difference may seem small, but it's everything. The Stoics knew this well. They taught that while we can't control what happens to us, we can always control how we respond. That simple truth can reshape your entire life. Today's conversation blends ancient wisdom with modern insight. We'll unpack how to develop a calm, conscious mindset, one that replaces impulse with purpose. You'll learn practical techniques to ground yourself, manage emotions, and regain control in any situation. By the end of this video, you'll walk away with real tools to build emotional resilience, improve your decision-making, and live with greater peace and purpose. Ready to unlock the power of your response? Let's begin. Number 1. The gap between stimulus and response. There's a moment, a fleeting instant, that separates the man who is ruled by emotion from the man who rules over it. That moment, though invisible to the eye, holds the weight of everything: your peace, your integrity, your strength. The ancient Stoics understood this long before modern thinkers gave it words. They knew the difference between reacting and responding was the difference between chaos and control. For many men, especially in a world that constantly demands instant answers and fast reactions, that space between stimulus and response is often lost. You get disrespected, you snap. Something goes wrong, and anger boils over. But these knee-jerk reactions don't make us stronger. They expose how unprepared we are. The man who hasn't trained his mind is constantly at the mercy of whatever the world throws at him. But the disciplined man? He pauses. Not because he's weak, but because he's strong enough to choose. He doesn't give his power away to insults, inconveniences, or emotion. He sees the space, he owns it, and from there, he responds. Not to please others, not to prove anything, but to stay in command of himself. This mindset isn't developed by reading quotes or feeling inspired for 5 minutes. It's built like a muscle, through repetition, reflection, and restraint. It's forged in the ordinary moments, holding your tongue during an argument, breathing instead of exploding, walking away when ego screams for revenge. These aren't signs of passivity. They're the signs of a man who's done the work. Stoicism doesn't ask you to feel nothing. It teaches you to do something better with what you feel. Anger, fear, frustration, they're signals, not commands. You don't ignore them. You study them. You learn when to act and when to be still. You learn that calm is a form of power, not a lack of it. And this isn't just about keeping your cool. It's about living a life that aligns with who you want to be. A life not dictated by mood swings, bad days, or the behavior of others. Over time, as you practice, the emotional storms become quieter. You don't take the bait. You don't need to react. You become the eye of the storm. Still, steady, immovable. Every difficult conversation, every traffic jam, every moment where pride flares up, that's your training ground. Each one is a test, not of the world, but of you. Will you be reactive and regretful, or calm and calculated? That's the question Stoicism asks of us, again and again. And if you're willing to do the work, if you're willing to see discomfort as a forge rather than a burden, then the man you become won't just be in control. He'll be unshakable. Number 2, emotions are not the enemy. A man doesn't become stronger by pretending he feels nothing. He becomes stronger when he learns how to face what he feels and choose what to do with it. Anger, fear, grief, they're part of life, especially as we age and carry more weight on our shoulders. The question isn't whether we feel. The question is whether we're ruled by what we feel. The ancient thinkers of Stoicism didn't tell us to be emotionless statues. They taught us to rise above being owned by our emotions. Emotions are like fire. Left unchecked, they consume everything. But harnessed with discipline, they become power. A man who is led by every wave of emotion is like a ship without a rudder. He's moving, but he has no direction. Modern life offers no shortage of triggers: disrespect, disappointment, delay. And yet, true maturity lies in how we respond. Not with explosions, not with silence, but with thoughtful clarity. When a man gives anger free rein, he invites chaos. When he buries it, he creates pressure that eventually explodes. But when he sees anger for what it is, a signal, not a sentence, he can use it to sharpen, not shatter. This kind of control doesn't come through willpower alone. It's built through self-examination. You have to become a student of your own mind. When something stirs you, ask why. Not to judge yourself, but to understand. What story are you telling yourself? Is it real? Is it useful? We can train ourselves to reframe what life throws at us. A setback isn't failure, it's feedback. An insult isn't truth, it's a test. What matters is how we choose to see it. Our perceptions shape our emotional reality. Change the lens, and the entire picture shifts. You don't develop this mental strength in comfort. Just like the body, the mind is forged in resistance. The next time you're in traffic and someone cuts you off, the default reaction might be rage. But the trained mind sees a choice: burn your energy in fury, or keep your peace intact. That choice, repeated daily, becomes character. This isn't detachment for the sake of indifference. It's about being centered enough to feel without being controlled. It's the ability to face discomfort without flinching, to carry responsibility without collapse, to meet life's heat without losing your cool. Over time, with practice, we stop reacting blindly and start responding deliberately. And that's when we begin to lead, not just in the world, but in our own lives. Because a man who governs himself well becomes a foundation for others. He becomes reliable, not because he hides his emotions, but because he knows what to do with them. Number 3, controlling your inner dialogue. Every man lives with an internal voice that no one else hears, but it shapes everything he does. It's not the world outside that defines you. It's the conversation you're having with yourself, day in and day out, in the quiet moments no one sees. If that inner voice is harsh, full of frustration, bitterness, or self-doubt, then life will always feel like a battlefield. Not because the world is against you, but because you're at war with your own mind. The way you interpret what happens to you, the story you tell yourself when things go wrong, that is what drives your behavior, your reactions, and ultimately, the kind of man you become. The Stoics knew this well. They didn't chase perfection. They pursued mastery over perception. To them, strength wasn't found in controlling everything around you, but in mastering how you see and respond to what unfolds. And at the heart of that mastery is one thing: the way you speak to yourself. Consider this. When a man faces failure, does he label himself as a loser? Or does he step back and say, "Here's a chance to sharpen my approach"? When someone insults him, does he take it as a personal attack? Or recognize that another person's words say more about them than about him? These are not shallow affirmations. They're not mental tricks. They're disciplines of perspective. They're what separate the man who crumbles under pressure from the one who grows stronger because of it. Most of us were never taught how to think about our thoughts. We just inherited voices from our upbringing, from our past, from a society that confuses performance with worth. But at some point in life, especially as we grow older and carry more weight, we have to take ownership of the voice inside. And if that voice doesn't reflect clarity, respect, and strength, it's time to change it. Start by paying attention. Noticing what you tell yourself in moments of stress. Do you catastrophize? Do you belittle yourself? Do you react out of old patterns that no longer serve you? Becoming aware is the first layer of power. Then, over time, you replace those narratives with something grounded, something true. For example, when things don't go your way, instead of collapsing into frustration, you can say, "This didn't happen to me. It happened for me, to teach me something I wouldn't learn otherwise." When you feel uncertain, remind yourself, "I don't need to control everything. I only need to control how I carry myself through it." This isn't some feel-good mantra. It's psychological strength. It's the difference between reacting emotionally and responding with authority. The more you practice this shift, the more your internal world becomes a place of direction, not confusion. A simple habit that reinforces this is writing. Not to sound poetic or impressive, but to confront your thoughts on paper. What triggered you today? What story did your mind tell you about it? And how could you choose a better one tomorrow? That process of reflection is what sharpens emotional discipline over time. And when you start each day with intention, even something as small as one core principle you choose to live by, your mind begins to follow that lead. Instead of waking up and falling into old patterns, you wake up with direction. That's how a man regains authority over his inner life. Not by chasing control of the world, but by taking control of how he speaks to himself through it. Your internal dialogue becomes your emotional compass. It determines your patience, your courage, your restraint. And as that voice matures, so do you. Not just in age, but in presence, in stability, and in how you show up for everything that matters. Because in the end, it's not about having perfect circumstances. It's about having a mindset forged through fire, a mindset that stands firm, even when life doesn't. Number 4, the practice of self-discipline. A man reaches a point in life where ambition alone no longer moves him. In youth, the desire to succeed might be fueled by excitement, ego, or the need to prove something. But as the years pass, he realizes lasting achievement doesn't come from bursts of energy. It comes from the quiet, steady force of discipline. Discipline is not about restriction. It's about choosing what matters most over what feels good in the moment. It's not the loud, chest-beating kind of strength. It's the silent kind. The kind that resists temptation when no one is watching. That keeps a promise when excuses would be easier. That wakes up and does the work even when inspiration is nowhere to be found. There's a kind of freedom only the disciplined know. A man who can govern his impulses, who doesn't cave to every craving or emotional surge, who can sit with discomfort and not flee from it, that man walks through life on solid ground. He's not owned by pleasure, nor crushed by hardship. He bends without breaking. What weakens most men isn't the weight of the world. It's their inability to carry themselves with consistency. They overeat, overspend, overreact. Not because they're evil or weak, but because they've never trained the mind to lead instead of follow. But a man who has trained himself, trained his appetites, trained his thoughts, trained his habits, he doesn't flinch when pressure comes. He meets it with clarity. Discipline is forged in the details. It's not just about grand sacrifices or dramatic gestures. It's in the way you begin your morning, the way you structure your hours, the way you respond to frustration. A strong man doesn't wait for ideal conditions. He creates order in the middle of the storm. His strength is in rhythm, not reaction. And this doesn't come overnight. It's earned in the repetition of simple, unglamorous acts. Rising early when you'd rather sleep in. Finishing what you started when boredom sets in. Delaying gratification because you believe in something bigger than the moment's craving. These daily choices shape character. Not all at once, but quietly, relentlessly. One of the most powerful ways to cultivate discipline is through voluntary challenge. Not to prove toughness, but to build inner calm. Expose yourself deliberately to small discomforts. Skip the unnecessary comfort. Step into cold. Fast for a day. Wake before dawn. Not to suffer, but to teach the mind that you're not at the mercy of convenience. You're in command. Discipline is also about how you recover. Every man slips. Every man fails. But the disciplined man doesn't spiral. He doesn't turn a mistake into a story of weakness. He reflects, adjusts, and gets back to work. He uses failure not as a reason to stop, but as material for growth. And when goals feel distant or motivation fades, he doesn't wait to feel ready. He follows a structure, a pattern of behavior he's built over time. The disciplined man doesn't depend on willpower. He depends on systems, on routine, on a clear sense of who he's becoming. In a world that urges immediate reward, quick pleasure, and constant distraction, a man who practices restraint becomes rare and powerful. His calm becomes a shield. His focus becomes a weapon. And his way of living begins to influence others, not through force, but through presence. So ask yourself, who is in control, your mind or your moods, your purpose or your impulses? Begin to train like a craftsman shaping something with care, not like a sprinter burning out in a rush. Real strength is built slowly, day after day, under the quiet pressure of consistency. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be persistent. Over time, the small, disciplined choices you make become your foundation. And from that foundation, you can build a life that doesn't collapse under pressure. A life guided by purpose, not ruled by impulse. That's not just discipline. That's freedom. Number 5. Strength in adversity. There comes a point in every man's life where ease no longer teaches him anything. Comfort, while pleasant, makes us soft. The real lessons, the ones that shape the man you become, arrive dressed as hardship. Not when things go right, but when everything seems to unravel. That's when resilience steps forward, or falls silent. Resilience isn't about appearing strong. It's about being unshakable when everything within you trembles. You don't build it through success. You earn it in the quiet chaos of failure, in the silent battles of private discouragement, in the long nights where no one's watching and quitting seems easy. The man who endures, not with a hardened heart, but with steady resolve, is a man who's trained his mind to see beyond pain. The Stoics, men who lived in a world as ruthless as ours, perhaps more so, didn't ask for life to be easy. They asked for the strength to meet it well. To them, difficulty wasn't a punishment. It was the proving ground of character. They saw adversity as a tool, a forge, a teacher. Not because they enjoyed suffering, but because they understood what it could make of them. When you hit a wall, be it a failed business, a betrayal, a health crisis, you have two choices. You can collapse into self-pity, letting the event define you. Or you can turn inward and ask, what is this trying to teach me? That shift in mindset isn't just philosophy, it's survival. Because the moment you stop resisting hardship and start engaging with it, it begins to shape you into something sharper, stronger, and more grounded. But resilience isn't built in a single moment. It's a long, deliberate conditioning of the soul. The daily practice of doing hard things, not for the result, but for what it does to your spirit. Rising earlier than you want to. Saying no to indulgence when comfort calls. Showing up when it would be easier to disappear. These are not heroic acts. They are repetitions. Repetitions that shape your mental muscle. You don't wait for chaos to find out whether you're strong. You train for it. You introduce friction into your life on purpose. Voluntary hardship, physical exertion, stillness and discomfort, delayed gratification, is not self-punishment. It's rehearsal. You're preparing yourself not to panic when life demands more than you're used to giving. Most people meet adversity like a surprise attack. They've never been under stress until stress arrives. But you, if you've trained, step into it differently. You don't collapse. You adjust. You assess. And then you respond with clarity. Real resilience is also deeply emotional. It's not just about grit. It's about grace. It's knowing how to feel pain without becoming bitter. It's learning to navigate disappointment without losing your direction. That kind of emotional stability comes from reflecting, not reacting. From journaling, meditating, walking through your thoughts like a craftsman inspects his tools. What triggered you? What story did you tell yourself about that moment? And is that story helping or hurting you? And then there's this. The world is unpredictable. No plan survives contact with reality for long. If you live long enough, you'll be blindsided more than once. So, instead of demanding that life behave, prepare for its misbehavior. Adaptation is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's the reason trees that bend in the wind outlast those that try to resist it. Resilience, at its highest form, is not just about endurance. It's about transformation. It's what happens when hardship doesn't just pass through you, but leaves behind strength where weakness once lived. It's when failure becomes a catalyst for reinvention, and chaos reveals a man who knows exactly who he is. And this takes time. A lifetime, in fact. But it begins in the small decisions. The daily refusal to give up. The willingness to suffer for something worthwhile. The mindset that doesn't seek a life without hardship, but a self that's unafraid of it. That's real resilience. And it doesn't just prepare you for life, it makes you worthy of it. Number 6, the power of perspective. The world is not against you. Your mind just hasn't learned how to see it yet. By the time a man reaches his late 30s, he's carried enough weight, professionally, emotionally, and personally, to understand this truth. Life doesn't ask for permission before it brings disruption. It doesn't pause to explain itself. Events unfold, without warning, without apology. And while many chase the illusion of control, The few who learn to master their perception discover something far more powerful than control: freedom. The Stoics knew this intimately. They didn't preach positivity or emotional suppression. They taught perspective, cold, sober, liberating perspective. They looked at the chaos of life and asked, what does this really mean? And more importantly, how much of that meaning am I inventing? A man loses a job. One perspective says, I've failed. Another says, I've been redirected. A flight is delayed. One view sees inconvenience. Another sees opportunity to slow down. Someone speaks harshly. You can call it disrespect, or you can call it a test of your composure. The event remains the same. The outcome depends entirely on how you frame it. Perception is the filter through which your entire emotional life flows. You don't suffer because of the facts. You suffer because of the story you attach to them. And until you understand that your interpretation, not the incident, is the source of your suffering, you'll be trapped in a cycle of reaction. But here's the truth. You have more agency than you realize. At any moment, you can step back from the noise in your head and ask, is this situation truly as I'm seeing it? Or am I viewing it through the lens of old fears, ego, and assumptions? That pause, right there, is the beginning of self-mastery. It helps to train this reflex. One powerful way is to mentally rise above your current problem, as if you're looking down on your life from 1,000 feet up. From that vantage point, what seems urgent today often becomes irrelevant. The criticism, the delay, the plan gone sideways, it shrinks. Your emotional grip loosens. You remember, this is just one page in a much longer story. Zoom out further, and you begin to see the absurdity of most frustrations. The little arguments, the temporary losses, the things that felt like everything in the moment, they all fade into the background noise of a life well lived. And from this view, you gain not only peace, but proportion. You become less reactive, more thoughtful, less fragile, more formidable. But reframing isn't just about calming down. It's a tool of transformation. Every obstacle can be viewed as fuel, not metaphorically, literally. Pain can sharpen. Delay can teach patience. Embarrassment can build humility. There is no situation so bleak that it cannot be used. And a man who learns to use adversity becomes immune to it. This isn't natural. It requires practice, reflection, courage. It means catching yourself in the heat of emotion and asking, what's another way to see this? What's the lesson hiding beneath this reaction? Not as a trick to feel better, but as a commitment to see things more clearly. The world won't stop throwing curveballs. People will still disappoint you. Plans will still unravel. That's the nature of existence. But when your perception matures, when you stop seeing every disruption as a threat and begin seeing it as material, you become dangerous in the best way. Not easily provoked, not easily broken. You carry yourself with calm, not because life is easy, but because your mind no longer demands that it be. And from that space, you make better decisions. You protect your energy. You create clarity for others. You lead, not through control, but through presence. So the next time life throws something unexpected at you, remember this: the event doesn't shape you. Your perspective does. The world is what it is. You are who you decide to be in the face of it. And that decision, repeated over time, is what defines your strength, not your circumstances. Number 7, the power of pause. There's a pivotal moment most men never recognize, let alone master. It's the space between what happens to you and how you choose to respond. In that quiet, fleeting gap lies the difference between living reactively and living deliberately. And it's in that space that real power is born. By the time you've crossed the threshold of your mid-30s, life has taught you something youth cannot. Not every battle is worth fighting, and not every feeling deserves a voice. You've seen where impulsive words lead. You've watched tempers ruin trust, pride sever connection, and haste turn progress into wreckage. The Stoics, men forged in hardship, not theory, understood this well. They didn't teach men to feel less. They taught men to be ruled less. They practiced the discipline of delayed response not to suppress their emotions, but to give their reason time to take the lead. A man governed by reaction is easily manipulated. Say the wrong word to him, and he'll explode. Push the right button, and he's yours. But the man who has trained himself to pause, to reflect before he speaks or acts, is unshakable. He moves not out of emotion, but out of intention. And that's the man people follow. That's the man people respect. This isn't about counting to 10 or biting your tongue. It's about transforming how you experience the moment itself. When something provokes you, criticism, disrespect, failure, the untrained mind contracts. It wants to lash out, defend, dominate. But the disciplined man expands. He sees more. He sees the motives behind the insult, the futility in the argument, the long-term cost of a short-term release. This ability doesn't emerge overnight. It's trained like a muscle, in the quiet repetitions of restraint. You begin by watching yourself in conflict. You notice the rise of heat in your chest, the tightening in your jaw. And instead of unleashing it, you observe it. You let it pass. And then you choose. Not out of pride, but out of principle. Sometimes that choice is silence. Other times, it's clarity spoken without aggression. And occasionally, it's simply walking away. Not because you lost, but because you refuse to play a game beneath you. But here's what few understand. Choosing not to react doesn't mean weakness. It means you're conserving strength. It means you've seen enough of life to know that most provocations aren't worth your energy. You're not here to win arguments. You're here to build something lasting. Respect, stability, legacy. To develop this way of being, reflection must become routine. Each evening, ask yourself, where did I lose my center today? What did I say that I didn't need to? What did I hold back that gave me strength? These questions carve a man of depth out of a man of habit, and over time, they make poise your default, not your exception. In a world addicted to instant reaction, where men are expected to answer quickly, act fast, and always be on, the one who can sit with discomfort without responding becomes rare and valuable. He becomes the man who can lead in crisis, navigate conflict, and hold the line when others break. Not because he doesn't feel pressure, but because he's mastered the art of not becoming it. That's what it means to respond rather than react. It's not about playing it safe. It's about playing it wise. And wisdom, for a man, is worth more than any temporary satisfaction. Train for that pause. Fight for that space. And own the kind of power no one can take from you. The power over yourself. Number 8. The role of rational thinking. When emotion leads, regret often follows. There comes a point in a man's life, often after enough scars, missteps, and hard-earned lessons, when he realizes that strength isn't in the loudest voice or the quickest reaction. It's in the ability to think clearly, especially when the stakes are high. It's in choosing to pause, assess, and act not from emotion, but from reason. A man ruled by his emotions is at the mercy of every slight, every delay, every disappointment. He becomes reactive, easily provoked, guided not by values, but by moods. But a man who builds his decisions on logic and reflection begins to operate from a deeper source, one not shaken by circumstance. This isn't about becoming cold or mechanical. It's about developing a kind of internal order, a disciplined mind that doesn't blindly follow the pull of anger, fear, or pride, but instead slows down, asks the right questions, and chooses his response with precision. The Stoics knew that reason is the only force capable of turning chaos into clarity. They practiced seeing things as they are, not as they felt in the moment. They trained themselves to ask, what's really happening here? What is within my control? What is the best action, not the most satisfying one? This kind of thinking doesn't come naturally, especially in a world that encourages outrage, speed, and constant reaction. That's why it must be trained. Through quiet reflection, through honest self-inquiry, through repeated practice until rational thinking becomes not an exception, but your default. Start by noticing the gap between stimulus and response, that small space where choice exists. Most people rush past it, letting emotion flood their judgment. But a wise man learns to live in that space. He sees it as a fortress, a place to gather his thoughts before stepping into the world with clarity. And in moments of heat, when provoked or challenged, he steps back internally, almost like watching the scene from a distance. He asks himself not, how do I feel, but what is true? What is useful? What would the best version of me do right now? That shift in perspective changes everything. Some days, the answer will be silence. Other days, it will be calm assertion. But every time reason guides the response, dignity is preserved and confidence grows. To strengthen this, rehearse future challenges before they happen. Not to obsess, but to prepare. Visualize the difficult conversation, the tense moment, the unexpected loss, and walk through it with reason as your anchor. Imagine how the man you want to be would carry himself. And then, when life delivers those moments, you're ready, not reactive. In the evening, revisit your choices, not to punish yourself, but to learn. Where did you let emotion override judgment? Where did you hold your ground and stay clear-headed? Over time, this reflection sharpens you. It becomes a quiet ritual that tunes your awareness and slowly, steadily transforms your habits. The truth is, rational thinking isn't just about making better decisions. It's about building a kind of inner architecture, a mental structure that keeps you steady when life shakes, that allows you to lead with intention, to withstand pressure, and to remain composed even when others lose control. This is what maturity looks like. Not passivity, but power held in reserve. Not the absence of emotion, but the presence of mastery over it. A well-trained mind doesn't seek to avoid the storms of life. It simply refuses to be blown off course by them. And in a world drowning in noise, emotion, and reaction, a man who thinks clearly, calmly, deliberately, becomes something rare. He becomes the man others turn to when it matters, because they can feel it in him. This one doesn't get swept away. This one holds the line. This isn't just about keeping your temper or avoiding conflict. It's about forging a way of life grounded in clarity and control. For the man who's lived long enough to see how easily emotion can sabotage his best intentions, reason becomes sacred. To respond instead of react is to reclaim authority over your life. It's not about appearing calm. It's about being rooted. It's the quiet discipline of asking yourself, in every challenge, What kind of man do I want to be in this moment? That's the real work. Not performance, but principle. You won't get it right every time. That's not the point. What matters is the return, the daily decision to rise above impulse, to act from the part of you that's built, not borrowed. Over time, that becomes who you are. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If something in it spoke to you, I'd appreciate hearing your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like to continue exploring this path of clarity, discipline, and inner strength, consider subscribing to the channel. Your presence here means more than you know.